Hey, this is MJ, and in today's tutorial, I'll be walking you through some of the steps required to make the Diamond Drift Cardigan. This tutorial does require the pattern, so if you click through the link in the description box, you will find the link to the pattern so that you can follow along with the chart. The yarn that I've used for this pattern is Color Theory by 2 of Wands, and this yarn was provided to me by Furls Crochet, and I'll have a link in the description box on where you can purchase it. The color that I used is Tourmaline and Moonbeam, but they have tons of amazing colors to choose from, so there's lots of great color combinations that you can put together. You will need 2 hook sizes for this crochet pattern, a 4mm as well as a 5mm crochet hook, and I'm using the Capricorn hooks from Furls Crochet. So the construction of this cardigan is a very cool construction. So I've worked the front panels and the back all in one piece. So I've started from the bottom, and as you can see, we have no seam. I wanted a nice, beautiful, consistent mosaic pattern without any seaming. So I've worked it all in one piece. Then what you'll do is continue to work up the back, and then we're going to separate our back and our front panels so that we can turn it in, and we'll join the sleeves onto those openings. Then we'll finish off by adding the collar ribbing that's going to look like the bottom here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the mosaic technique that I'm using. So this is the inset, and there are no tails. So as you can see, we don't have any tails to weave. We're going to be working 2 rows in each color, and we use drop downs to make the beautiful stitch pattern. So there's no tail, so this technique works out really great for making a cardigan. So here is the mosaic chart we're going to be working from. If you have not worked mosaic crochet before, this is an intermediate pattern. It is a little bit more complicated, so it may not be one that you want to start with, but I will work through some of the rows with you and explain the technique when we get to that part. So we're going to start out with this band before we get into our mosaic pattern. But I'm just going to show you. The chart is all included in the pattern, so you're going to want to work alongside with that. And you'll be following here for the right side and the wrong side of the cardigan, this chart. So it just makes it easy to look. Plus, I've also included a larger chart in the pattern if you want to do a swatch with that, and you can see a little bit more of how the pattern is going to look. So this is all included in the pattern, so you want to make sure you follow along, but let's get started. Okay, so we're starting with color A and our smaller hook. Make a slip knot, put that on your hook, and we're going to begin with a chain of 15. In the second chain from the hook, we'll work a single crochet, and we'll work single crochets across the chain. So you should have 14 stitches. We'll chain 1 and turn, and now we'll work single crochets in the back loop only. So our entire band now will be worked in the back loop, and we'll be working back and forth in rows. So you'll need to work the number of rows for the size that you're working on. So this is going to be a long stretch because you're working the front panels and the back all at the same time. We'll chain 1 and turn and repeat row 2. Single crochets in the back loop only. Okay, so for the size that I'm working on, the medium large size, we'll be doing a total of 163 rows. Now I am not going to be crocheting that all out and working that all with you. I'm just going to show you the stitch pattern. So I only need to work up a total of 19. So even if you want to do a gauge swatch, or if you want to go the bit bigger and do, believe it's 37, you could do 37, or you could go ahead and do 19 like I'm going to show you in the tutorial. But when you're working on your full sweater, you're going to be working out 100 and double check again, 163 for the medium large size. So once you have your required number of rows, we'll chain one, and we're going to work along the length of the band in single crochets. So I'll be working across 19 for this demonstration. You'll be working 163 for the medium large size. And it's just one single crochet per row. You're going to find one of the rows, there's just going to be that little loop right here. And then the next row, it will be a thicker section to go through, and that'll help keep you on track. And then you'll be back to that little loop again. So work that across. Okay, so if we look at the chart, we've just worked row 1A. So we worked across on the right side a total of 19. Now we're going to come over to 1A and we're going to work back. So I'm going to chain one and turn, and I'm going to work back in single crochets all the way across. So nothing fancy yet. Just work all the way back. We're going to change color on the last stitch. Okay, so I'm coming up to my last stitch. I'm going to pull up a loop. We're going to yarn over with color B. I'll chain one and turn, and now I'm going to crochet over my tails on that first stitch. I'm going to work a single crochet right there. Now, make sure you drop off color A to stay there. We're going to be hiding this tail as we go and picking it back up. So let's take a look at row 2. So row 2, we're working with color B. And every time you see, whoops, our color B, we're working a single crochet. When you see a box filled in with color A, we're going to chain one and skip a stitch. So single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, single, 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 chain one, skip a stitch, singles, chain one, skip a stitch, singles, chain one, skip a stitch, single. Okay, so that's how this row is going to be worked. So we've already single crocheted. And just make sure when you chain one, you're doing it loose. You don't want it too tight. And now we skip that stitch and we're single crocheting 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm to another blue box, so chain one, skip a stitch. Then 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, then another blue box, so chain one, skip a stitch. 1, 2, 3, chain one, skip a stitch, and a single crochet in the last stitch. Okay, so now for row 2A, we're doing the exact same thing. So let's chain one and turn. We'll work a single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, 3 singles, And now this row is easy to sort of just go by the chain 1 skip stitches so that you don't have to keep looking at the chart. And that's why working that loose is really going to help you identify when you come to it. And that's just a little tip to maybe work across the row quicker. But if you're struggling to identify what's what, then make sure you follow along with your chart. Okay, and now the trick that I like to do to really hide this tail is I'm going to just drape that over my hook. I'm going to go through the stitch. I'm going to pull up a loop, give it a tug so that it's hidden. And now we're going to drop off and we're going to pick back up color A, pulling through, chain 1 and turn. And I like to just get turned and single crochet over that tail right away. And that's what we're going to do all the way up the side so that we don't see any tails. Okay, so now on row 3, this is when we're going to start into our drop down. So we're on the right side, we're going to single crochet, we're going to do a drop down double right here, another single crochet, and then we're going to come to our 2B boxes. So we're going to chain 2, skip 2. Okay, let me try to get this a bit bigger for you. So chain 2, skip 2. Then we're going to do a drop down, single, and then you need to chain 5 and skip 5. Single crochet, drop down. Okay, so I'm going to show you now how to do that. It's not as scary as it seems. So I have crocheted over B, so let's get it out of the way. We've single crocheted already. So now we're going to do that drop down and see how that stitch is available. So we're going down 3 rows below to that stitch that we skipped. So we're going to yarn over. We're going down front to back. Pull through 2, pull through 2. Okay, so now we're going to single crochet in the next. And then we need to chain 2, skip 2. So chain 2, skip 2 stitches. Then we have a drop down because we're coming here to those chains that we can tell right there. So we're going to drop down. Okay, and a single crochet, and then we have to chain 5, skip 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in the next stitch is a single, and then a drop down, chain 2, skip 2, and then we have a single, a drop down. And if we were continuing on with this pattern, this would be a chain, okay? But because I'm coming to the end, I'm just finishing it off with a single crochet because every first and last stitch we need a single crochet. So I am just doing that to show you this swatch. But if you are actually working the repeat, which this is your repeat, rows 2 through 19, you would be chaining 1 there. Okay, so then next we're going to be looking at row 3A. Okay, and what you'll notice with 3A is we don't have any X's because that's when we're on the wrong side. We're not doing any drop downs. So let's chain 1 and turn. So when we look at this, we're going with single crochets in the blue, and then we'll be chaining and skipping stitches for our color B. So now it's just single crochets and chains because what we're going to end up with on this side is it will be flatter, won't have any of the pattern. So 1, 2, 3, and then we'll chain 2. And then we'll skip 2, and again you can really follow along with what we've already established. So now we'll chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got a single and a single, chain 2, and then we have 3 singles. Okay, and now when we're coming to the end, you need to remember the little trick that I've shown you for hiding those tails. So we need to, I just always like to drape it over my hook, go through the stitch, pull up a loop, tug on that tail so it disappears. Then we're dropping off a yarning over with B. We'll chain 1, give the tail a tug, turn, and get that single crochet, crocheting over that tail out of the way right away here. Okay, so now let's take a look at 4. Okay, so we're dropping off A. So with B, we've already worked a single, we're working another single, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then we have 2 drop downs, and the stitches should be right there available. Okay, and then a single crochet, and then a chain 1, skip stitch, and then we have 5 drop downs. Now, as you can see, we have this big loose chain. So I'm going to show you a little tip on how to just secure it so that it's not flopping and catching on stuff. So we'll start out with the first drop down, just as normal, working in front. Now, if we yarn over, go through the stitch, and also have those chains go over the hook, come in behind here, we're gonna pull that through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. The next stitch, I'll just do normal. The next one, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna leave the chains on top of the hook, and we're gonna get them tucked right in. Okay, so I've done the 5, and then you can see here that we've now secured, anchored those chains so that they're not flopping all the way around. We'll chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet, drop down 2, chain 1, single, and this would be a drop down if you're following this as your repeat, but because we're again ending, we're single crocheting in that last stitch. But if you're working your whole cardigan across, you're repeating row 2 through 19, so you're continuing following this repeat pattern. Whoops, now we're over to 4A. We'll chain 1 and turn, And it's pretty easy again, just to follow along. So my single crochets, chain 1, 1, 2, 3. So we're single crocheting in the drop downs, and we're chaining 1 and skipping. So now we should have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Chain 1, skip a stitch. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, skip a stitch. And single crochet in the last 2. And now make sure to drape that over your hook, go through the stitch, pull up a loop, give that yarn a tug to hide it. And then we are yarning over, pulling through, chain 1, and single crochet. Make sure to go over that tail. And you can see how we are just hiding that all the way up the side. And next you would be on to 5A, but this is how the pattern is going to work whenever you come to any of those big chains. Make sure you do this just to secure. This is just a little tip. If not, you're going to end up with those big chains in behind. So now I'm going to leave you to work through the mosaic pattern. It will be a little bit time consuming because again, we're working such a big section. So it's always good to maybe start off with a smaller swatch just to get your gauge, make sure that you're on track with the pattern before you start doing those long rows, because 163 stitches is a lot if you mess up. So you're going to work through the entire pattern. So let's go here. So you're going all the way up to row 34. Okay, so you're following along. You're going to get this beautiful diamond pattern. It's going to look a little bit more like this chart here. So follow all the way up to row 34. Once you complete the mosaic section of the pattern, you're going to work a total of 20 rows of half double crochet. Now you will need to drop to a 4mm hook size to meet the pattern gauge. Otherwise, if you keep using the 5mm hook, it's going to end up much bigger than the mosaic section of the pattern. Once you have worked your 20 rows, we're then going to separate our back and our front panels, as you can see here. So then I worked over 36 stitches for the front panel. So I went back and forth, and basically what you're doing is now working the length you need for the size for your arm opening. So I worked a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, which should be approximately 8 inches. So I have about 8 inches, which our sleeve will end up being about 16, which is a good size for the size cardigan I'm working on. So once you've completed that, what you're gonna do is just come right back in the next stitch, join on, and work across a total of 91. Working back and forth again, working the same number of rows. Once you complete that, you have your final panel to do. So we come over, we join right again into the next stitch. You should have 36 stitches remaining, and then you continue working the same rows again. So what this allows us to do now, we're gonna fold the cardigan, okay? And then we can join on to work our sleeve. So how we'll do our shoulder seam, is we're going to fold it in so that our right sides are facing. And then we're going to get this seamed up before we join on to start working the arm. So now we have the nice finished stitch for seaming. So it is up to you. Use your preferred seaming method. I'm just going to use a whip stitch to do this, but you could slip stitch across, really whatever you prefer. So I'm just going to grab, I didn't leave a long enough tail here. I don't know, maybe it's long enough. I usually like double, so I don't think this one's quite long enough. So I left a long tail on this side. I really prefer to work from this side across, making sure I have the correct stitch count. But what I'm gonna do is count across 36 and just mark it and then use this tail. Okay, so I marked the 36 stitch just so I know I'm gonna be on track. Okay, I'll go through the first one twice. And then I'm just weaving through the full stitch on this side and then going over to the other side. So you'll do this for both shoulders. Okay, so I've worked my way across and now I'm just going to weave in these tails and I'm going to go ahead and do the other side as well. So once I have completed the other side, we're going to meet back up and I'm going to show you how to work the sleeve. Okay, so this is what the front is looking now, and we have our openings for our arms right here. So next, what we're gonna do is join on to start working our arm. Now we wanna go around a total of 56 stitches, which will be a 16-inch sleeve opening. So what I'm going to do is I'll mark the top with a stitch marker so I know I need to get half of my stitches in by the time I get to the top. Okay, so I'm continuing still with my smaller hook. Okay, so you'll need to join on with the gray and your smaller hook, and we're just going to have to evenly try to space out the right amount of stitches for this. So it may take a couple tries, but I'm aiming for 28. So a half double crochet, okay, so I've worked all the way up to my marker and I have done 28. And now I need to aim for another 28 stitches down this side. So 56 in total. I'm just gonna mark this that this is my center just in case I need to pull back to adjust my count again. Okay, so once you've worked all the way around, we're gonna do a reverse slip stitch to join. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna keep my yarn to the front. You're going from the back to the front through your stitch. Okay, and then you're just gonna pull through with the yarn. I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to turn my work for 2 reasons. We want it to continue in the same sort of turning pattern we already had, plus a half double crochet is going to have a really significant, the seam will really curve, so just turning it stops it from doing that. So I'm going to work another round now of half double crochets at the 56 stitch mark. Okay, so I've worked all the way around. I'm going to reverse slip stitch to join. Chain 2 and turn. And now every 3rd row we're going to be doing decreases. Now of course you can modify this if you'd rather a bigger sleeve. You don't have to do the decreases, but this is going to taper the sleeve down to the cuff. So I'm going to work a half double crochet in the first stitch, and then I'm going to work a half double crochet decrease across the next 2. Okay, and I'm going to work that all the way around to the last 3 stitches, and then we're going to do another decrease. Okay, so I have 3 stitches remaining. Let's go ahead and do a decrease. So again, let's go over that decrease, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 5 loops. Half double crochet in the last stitch. And you can reverse slip stitch or just do a regular slip stitch. Chain 2, and then we'll turn. So now you should be at 54 stitches. You're going to work 2 rounds of half double crochet at the 54 stitch mark, and then do another decrease round the exact same way. So now what's helpful again with this pattern is that you can try this on as you go for the correct sleeve length. So if you want to alter the pattern, you can make the sleeve longer, you can make it shorter. Really, you can just keep going. Now I am going to add a fair size cuff to it. So let me just measure the cuff for you. So you want to figure that in your measurement. It is about... It's about 3 1/4 inches, so you will be adding that cuff. So you want to take that into consideration when you're figuring out the length of your sleeve. So I am just going to keep working 2 rounds of non-decrease and then a decrease round, and I'm going to do that until I get the length that I need, and then I'll show you how to do the join as you go cuff. It'll just be ribbing like we did here. It's just we'll be joining it as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the sleeve, and I'll do my other sleeve as well, and we'll meet back up for the cuff. So I continued decreasing my sleeve until I had 36 stitches, and then I proceeded to do 3 more rounds. I wanted to end on the right side coming around, so I did an extra from what we were normally doing, 2 rounds of non-increase. So this time I finished with 3 rounds of non-increase, and I'm just going to measure it so you can kind of have an idea as to how long my sleeve is. Okay, so it's about 12 inches, and then I'm going to add the cuff, which is an additional 3 inches. Okay, so in total 15, but this is quite a drop shoulder because it's oversized, but you can go ahead and make this longer if you need to. So if you're happy with, let's say, the 36 stitch point, but you would like your sleeve longer, just continue with rounds as long as you want. If you'd like the cuff even tighter than what I've done, you could continue to decrease. But this is what I have done now, and I'm going to change over to color B to complete the cuff. So we're going to yarn over, go through the stitch, pulling up a loop, and then I need to yarn over with color B. So we're going to slip stitch to join, chain 1, and for this round I'm just going to work a single crochet in each stitch around, and I'm going to crochet over those tails as I go. And this will set us up for the join as you go cuff that we're going to do. We should be working around that 36 stitches. Okay, so once you've worked all the way around, we'll slip stitch to join. And now we're going to chain out to do that join as you go cuff. So we'll chain out a total of 15. Then we'll work a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain across. So we'll have a total of 14 stitches. So now once you've worked all the way down, we're skipping that first stitch that is joined to the chain. So that first stitch is equal to this first row that we've made. So now we'll slip stitch into the next 2 stitches, and then we'll be crocheting 2 rows for those 2 slip stitches. So we'll have the same number of rows worked around as we do stitches. So 36 rows in total is what we'll be making. So now we'll turn, we're skipping over the 2 slip stitches, and then we're working single crochets in the back loop. And that should be a total of 14. And then we'll chain 1 and turn, working back down, single crochets in the back loop. Okay, so we've now crocheted 3 rows. We'll slip stitch into the next 2 stitches for the next 2 rows. And then we'll skip over the 2 slip stitches, working, and we're just repeating this all the way around. So we'll be ending with only 1 slip stitch for that final row. So the final row will be ending up here, and then we can slip stitch the cuff together once we've worked all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and work this up now off camera, and then I'll meet you back up when it's time to join it. Okay, so I've worked all the way around a total of 36 rows. Now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to fold the cuff here so that I have the right sides facing, and then I'm going to slip stitch it together. So just go through the one side and then go through the stitch. And once you finish that, you can fasten off. And then we can just weave in any remaining tails. So now for the edge, what we're gonna do is join on with our larger hook, getting it into the first stitch here of the band. We'll chain one, and we're going to loosely slip stitch across. Try not to do these too tight. Or it's gonna be hard to work into your slip stitches later. Now what you want to do is evenly slip stitch as evenly as you can along the side. The slip stitch edge is going to make it just look really nice and clean. Clean up that side of the edge here. Again, just try not to do them too tight. This is going to set us up to do our join as you go band, which will be the collar all the way around. Okay, so I am going to continue this. We're going to work this all the way around the entire cardigan, the slip stitches. It's going to take a minute to do all of this, so I'm going to work away off camera. Okay, so I've worked all the way to the other side. Now just a tip is I found 1 slip stitch per row, so 2 per color, and then when I was going across the half double crochet rows, you're doing 3 for every 2 rows. So that's sort of roughly how I gauged my slip stitches. Now, once I get here, I'm going to fasten off because we're going to come back to the other side. It'll be much easier to work doing this on the right side than on the wrong side. And we're going to switch over now to our smaller hook. We're going to join into where we started. Try to find that first stitch. It'll be a little tight. Chain 1, and then we'll start working single crochets in the back loops only of those slip stitches. So we're with the smaller hook now, and we're going to do a row here of single crochet before we get doing our join as you go ribbing for the collar. Okay, now it should be fairly easy to work into these because we did use the bigger hook, and I tried to keep those slip stitches fairly loose as I went. So it shouldn't be too bad working them. I'm just catching some strings there. So I'm going to continue now. I'll work this all the way around, and then we'll meet up again for starting that join as you go band. Okay, so it was a little bit more work, but you can see how nice now our edge looks for starting that collar. And I'm also going to fasten off at this side. This is going to give us some more tails to weave. But again, I like how it looks when I join the band as you go from working the right side, not the wrong side. So I'm coming all the way back over here again. So like I say, we'll have some more tails to weave, but it's not a big deal. It'll look better in the long run. So we're gonna join in. We're going to chain out 11. Okay, and then single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain across. So we're basically working the band like we have before. The only difference is that we're having to slip stitch to the side to join it as we crochet it. So when you get all the way down, we're skipping over that first stitch, slip stitch into the next two. We're going to turn, skip over the 2 slip stitches, 1, 2, and then we're single crocheting in the back loops only. We'll chain 1 and turn, and then we'll work single crochets in the back loop only back along the row. Okay, and once you're back, we're going to now find the next 2 stitches and we're going to slip stitch into the next 2. Again, turn and keep working. Skip over the 2 slip stitches, and then we're continuing to work this band, and it's a good idea to count as you go because it is really easy to get your stitches off. So single crochet in the back loop, and we're just slip stitching it. Okay, and it's going to take a while to get this all done. You can always alter this. You could make it shorter or longer. So I'm going to continue now with mine off camera, and then I'll meet you up when I'm finished. So I completed working my collar all the way around. So now what you're going to want to do with this is give it a steam. Now make sure that you're careful not to mount the stitches, but steaming it will just help everything to lay nice, that these aren't curling. So just giving it that steam or blocking it, whatever you prefer. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tap the bell to stay updated on all my new videos and tutorials. Make sure to click through to the description box for all the links. Thanks so much, guys. Have an awesome day.